Howdy out there, everybody, and thanks again for joining us here on Expanded Perspectives. It's me, Cam Hale, and as always, the man across the table from me that rarely washes his hand after using the bathroom, Mr. Kyle Filio-Filson.
How's it going, everybody? I hope everybody's doing great out there. I feel great.
You look like hell.
Is that true?
No, you look fine. I'm glad to see you kept your beard, though.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
But I have seen that you've been trimming up under your neck and doing a little line work, probably with your Dollar Shave Club.
That's right. That's absolutely correct. Do you see the mass exodus of caterpillars outside? I don't know what's going on.
The whole front stoop area is just, and what are they, like a half-inch long?
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. My mother actually called me yesterday and told me it was happening at her house. She said, I bought some poison, but I'm afraid to put it out. I think it might hurt the deer or something. I was like, yeah, are they bothering you?
Yeah.
She's like, no.
They're
I was like,
caterpillars.
Leave them alone. But she's like, you don't understand, Kyle. They're like hundreds. So I was like, whatever. I get home yesterday afternoon. I completely forgot about the conversation. My mom shows up over here at the house and starts talking to DeLee. And DeLee says, oh, man, Patty, you should have seen all the caterpillars out there. And I'm like, what does everybody know
I don't
about
have
this?
them at my house.
So I thought the two of them, who knows what the heck they're talking about. Then sure enough, this morning I get out, go get the newspaper. There's caterpillars everywhere. I bet the birds are loving it.
I don't have that issue. I think it's something that follows your family around. It's a curse, a caterpillar curse.
What's odd is they're all moving from north to south. Like they're all going in the same direction. It's crazy.
That's pretty wild.
I've never seen anything like it. I need to Google and find out what that is.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, for real, we do.
Or is there like, I'm always thinking like impending doom. Is like something happening I don't know about? Like all the animals are retreating?
Well, like all in the news for the super volcano that they said could possibly erupt faster than they think?
Yeah.
I'm not down with that.
And there's little to no warning.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah, I'm not down with that.
You know, that's the problem with us humans is we just kind of forget that the planet can be so dynamic. We just kind of lose fact that, there's volcanoes and stuff all around us. And every once in a while, of course, with the hurricanes recently, I guess you're kind of reminded
and the wildfires.
But what's crazy is we're still dumb. After all the cleanup and stuff happens, people would build beach houses right on the place where the hurricane just wiped everything out all over again.
But it's a pretty place.
Beautiful.
It's a beautiful
problem
place.
is the ocean comes in every once in a while and takes everything away with it.
Seems like all those folks up there dealing with the wildfires. It's a beautiful, beautiful place, but it can be so bad.
You're 100% right. My wife was just, because, we're going to California in like 3 weeks. And she was like, oh, guess what? There's this fires going on up there. And I was like, oh, great. A trip I planned right where I wanted to go is now all burnt. But luckily it's not. Where we're going is going to be it seems to be safe right now. But man, there's fires up north. There's fires down south. It's crazy.
It's wild, yeah. And
now we got this looming volcano, super volcano. And I just saw another asteroid just missed the Earth by like 27,000 miles the other day. Size of a school bus.
What is it, the Magic School Bus? Is that one where that old gal used to drive it around?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, you do, like the old cartoon. You know exactly what I'm talking about. No, your kids are way younger than mine. Never mind.
Well, let's get into the news, Cam. What were you telling me about these new headphones?
Dude, you're going to dig this stuff. This is one of those things. You ever just drive around and start thinking about, I wish I had some sort of special powers? Like, man, I wish I had like some magic power. Like we've even talked about what we would like to have and different things like that, which reminds me, we have a Q&A, the Ask Cam and Kyle stuff. We need to get back to. We've got that stuff piled up.
Oh, I know. We got so many. What happened? We always forget to do them.
We always forget to do them. It just dawned on me now. We need to write us a note so we remember to do it. I tell you what, next week we'll get back on that, folks. We'll answer some more of those questions. I'm sorry it's taking so long. We're dummies. But one of the special powers that I'd thought about is I was like, man, I wished I could understand every language. You know what I mean? Like every language fluent.
I do understand what you're saying.
Perfect.
What I wish is that we would just all universally come up with one language.
Well, that would be handy too.
Right?
That would be very handy. But it's one of those things, how cool would that be? Well, if you go to collectiveevolution.com, they are doing a story about headphones that will allow you to understand any language. Philly.
That's cool.
At Google's Pixel 2 event in San Francisco last week, said there was a lot of stuff that was there that you would imagine. They were talking about smartphone technology, body cameras, all kinds of stuff going on. And Google revealed a pair of wireless headphones. I said, but not just any wireless headphones. It's containing built-in language translation software with the ability to translate between 40 different languages.
Wow, that's impressive.
In real time.
Wow.
Yes.
Even Siri isn't in real time. You'll go, hey, Siri, and then it'll be like 10 seconds. Hold on. Yeah. You're waiting. Waiting. The movie starts at this time. So even Siri, which is pretty advanced, isn't that fast.
Well, that's what they talk about. Is they said we've had promises of this in the past. but the technology hasn't really been made available to us yet. Well, now it says, and they talk about it. Could you imagine using them? Could you imagine putting them on and using them and all this stuff? They said, but here's the difference. These headphones are designed for exclusive use with Google's new Pixel 2 handset. And that once the headphones are paired, you can tap the earpiece on the right and a voice command to the Google Assistant that's installed on the Pixel 2. Says these headphones, of course, can play music. They'll give you directions. You can make a phone call. They will assist you if you need to speak Korean or French, Mandarin, Spanish, Japanese, any of that. Says all you have to do in a voice command is help me speak Japanese and then start saying what you would like translated in English.
That'd be a really good tool, too, if you're just trying to learn how to speak another language.
Well,
like imagine if you're driving around at work, you got nothing else to do, and you're trying to learn, say, Russian, for example. You would say, well, how do you say I need to get gas? Or, and then it would tell you. And I imagine if you practiced for a couple months, man, you'd be able to speak it pretty good.
Well, and here's the difference when we talked about real time. You were more right than you know with the whole Siri thing. Because with that handset, if I was trying to speak, say, Japanese to you, and I wanted to ask you where something was, I would speak it, and it would come out of the speaker on that handset where you would hear it in your language. Then you would reply, and then it would translate it, and I would hear it in the headphones that I was wearing.
Right.
That's how this whole thing works. So it is, of course, very, very simple. Now, they said that there are some issues, like Wi-Fi connectivity. It's not like it's built into the machine.
Yeah.
It is like, they said there's also some things where they're having problems with a little bit of background noise or maybe some, interference or things like that, some interruptions, stuff like that. But what they're saying is in the realm of language translation software that just, it's come an extremely long ways from what we first started to be able to do, and that it's constantly evolving. And here's the thing. I had no idea that this was something that somebody was really pursuing. I figured it would be
right.
like, there's probably a little thing out there, but we pretty much know that in order to really have a fluid conversation, you have to learn the language. There's always, because a language barrier is a big, big deal, especially when it comes to traveling. It's a big thing, but it does seem like this is, it seems like what they're trying to do, and it may end up getting there before we even know it, is it's going to become part of your phone, that eventually your phone will have the ability, once it's refined down, to do it. Like we used to talk about, we used to carry iPods and phones.
Yep.
And then they've slowly grown together. You used to have an iPad and your phone, and now the iPad isn't near as useful as your phone is now. Everything is kind of coming together, and then the coalescence of like a laptop. Everybody had a laptop. Now they're more going to those little foldable tablets.
Yeah.
Because you can do just about everything you could do on a laptop on that tablet. There are a few differences, but they're bridging that gap to where now, instead of it being so expensive, you get a good little folding tablet for $400.
Yeah, you can get a pretty good Chromebook for $400, man.
It's all changing. So this is something that I believe is going to really make a huge difference, because everybody's got their phone. Imagine being able to talk into that real time. You say it and then boom, it's spitting it right out there to them. It would be extremely helpful.
And you said it's got 40 languages now, but that's going to be increasing too. So
I'm sure monthly they're probably changing as it goes.
Man, that's pretty awesome. Well, speaking of awesome, checking out this new UFO sighting that was forwarded over to MUFON. It's pretty interesting. It says, on August 25th, 2017, my wife and I were traveling southeastern on New Mexico Highway 550 in our motorhome. We were about 30 miles northwest of Cuba, New Mexico, when we left the highway for a short time looking for a campground. After realizing the campground was 35 miles south and out into the desert, we returned back to Highway 550. Now, shortly after returning to the highway, we were cruising at around 60 miles per hour, and we were very quiet. We weren't talking, nothing. I had noticed before the event that we were entering an area where they had cut away an area of a high hill that seemed to leave a 40 to 60 foot high cliff on the north side of the road. Now, as we came close to where the event occurred, the only thing in sight was a truck coming, which was about a quarter of a mile away. As we entered the area of the cliffs, I noticed a flash of white light that came from my left. Now, I instinctively loomed over to my left, and I saw two creatures sitting about a foot apart inside of a craft. They were within 30 feet of us and got closer as I passed by. There seemed to be no windshield, as we would call it. They were dressed in light green matching uniforms. Behind them was a panel of what I could call heavy light. The creature on the left, saw me out of the corner of his eye and made a strange facial expression and turned his head towards me. And in a flash, they disappeared. I saw the small control panel, his eyes in detail, his left hand, and their slim bodies. I saw inside of the vessel and was amazed at how beautiful it was. I could not see the outside shape of the vessel, though, but I did see everything inside. My wife says they went back off into the cliff. I do feel the craft turned away from me, but where it went, I have no idea. So this guy and his wife are driving. They see this strange craft. It looks like they're in a convertible or something. No windshield or nothing, and two little green guys flying the thing. And it looked at him, made a weird facial expression, I guess winked at him, and then just took off. What do you make of that? And this happened just on August, a couple months ago.
There are a lot of reports of these things flying around in, like what we said, would seem like a convertible.
Yeah.
What is that?
I don't know.
Right? What is going on? But every time I think of the convertibles and the people seeing them and not seeing anything, I always think of the story we did about the little people in the little biplanes. You remember they were like flying, and it's like the little beard and the little hat. And I always think of, could you imagine seeing that?
I always think of when we were talking about the different models of the UFOs, like this one's a Buick, this one's a Pontiac, like this. That's just a particular famous model.
Yeah, there you go.
That convertible one.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, what year model? That was the Mazda Miata convertible that they come cruising by in a little 2-seater.
The Pontiac Fiero convertible.
That's right. That's what that was. Well, we're doing stories, several, of course, about this Mothman in Chicago.
Yeah, man. There's been tons of sightings.
Tons. Well, there's something that I come across that Lon posted from Phantoms and Monsters that he was sent, and it's basically the exact opposite of that. I want you to listen to this. It was a white bird-like humanoid that accosted a rural South Dakota witness.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, a white bird-like. So this happened back on June 9th of 2014. This is to a friend and I in rural South Dakota. It was a clear night, kind of boring. We've been visiting friends here and there all evening, just going around visiting. Said usually we'd be sipping a beer by the time the evening came, but for whatever reason that day, we decided not to. We were just cruising and listening to music. It started getting late, and everywhere we went, people were drinking. Sad, but just another night here. So after wasting gas all night, we decided to go check out some other people we knew. Well, we pulled up, and by then it was around 2 a.m, but everyone was hanging out outside in the front yard, passing a bit of liquor around. So we sat around and visited. I think either of us took one shot before we decided to head out because I was getting tired and wanted to go home. We set out, our laters and goodbyes, and then we jumped in the car. Well, now the place we were visiting was down the street, almost the last house on a one-way street with houses on each side, until a few driveways before the stop sign where you would enter the street. And there were like 2 or 3 lots vacant on the right side. Just basically an open field with a row of trees a little further back. Well, here we're driving maybe 15 miles an hour, if not less, just trying to find a song to listen to. So we both really weren't paying any attention to the road. And I look up and I see what looks like a dog or some kind of animal alongside the road by one of those empty driveways. It looked like it was eating, kind of hunched over, but bigger than a dog. Then the closer we got to this thing, it turns its head back towards us, and we can see it in the headlights. But while it's turning around, it's also starting to stand up.
Uh-oh.
Like a person, but not a person.
That's not good.
Never good.
No.
This is by the time we pull right up alongside, its body hits the right side of the car. Now, this all happens in a matter of seconds. It isn't anything I've ever seen before. Like a cross between a man and a bird. White, with all these weird feathers or something on its body, with long fingers, like 8 or 9 inches long. And I remember these fingers because it reached in the window while we slowed down.
Uh-oh.
It had some kind of weird things sticking out of its head, like horns or something.
Why would you slow down?
Right? And at the same time, we're freaking out, and my friend is saying, go, go, go. And this thing's got its arm out to the side, and all these fringes are hanging off its arm and moving all over its body, making a noise like when a porcupine shakes its quills.
I don't know what that sounds like.
I always think of that, the one off of
Pelican.
The one was
Nightbreed.
Nightbreed. That's what I'm thinking about. Or the girl that was the dancer, and she had the quills on her back.
Yeah.
And he goes on to say that then it screams like the ugliest scream or holler, and it was so loud. I slammed on the gas and was just trying to get the hell out of there. I ran the next 2 stop signs freaking out, and I didn't stop until I got back further into town. So anyway, we stopped. I'm still freaking out, sitting there crying, trying to figure out what the hell it was I saw. So we ended up staying all night, sitting in the car in the driveway of a family member, trying to figure it all out, scared to move. And in the meantime, I called the people whose house we just came from, because they're all outside only about 4 houses down the street, thinking they had seen us slow down and stop. But they had heard that thing scream, so they heard it. But it says when I talked to them, nobody heard it down there at the party. So they know that they heard it scream beside the car. But the party, they didn't hear anything. 4 houses down, didn't hear a sound. Of course, you're drinking and partying and all that stuff. Maybe it wasn't as loud as you thought it was. Who knows? But that's what's even more strange. But they said that they had seen us leave and, and all that stuff, but that's all they'd noticed. They didn't see them stop down there. They're not paying attention. It goes on to say that I don't know what it was, but I had nightmares for a year or so, almost every night. And yeah, I'll admit, I still look for things that might be similar looking and then listening to these stories trying to find something out. I just wished I could get an explanation for what we saw.
I could imagine that. If you see something truly bizarre and shocking like that, you probably would spend the rest of your life going, although it was terrifying, I would love to just go back because I would love to know what it was. What was I seeing? And it seems like there's just, I don't know, for whatever reason, there seems to be a lot of sightings of these winged humanoids lately. What is going on?
The thing that always, it can't be flesh and blood.
I don't think so.
There's no fossil record of any remains that we have found anything remotely close to this.
I agree.
You're talking about a big feathered humanoid with horns or something coming up out of its head. You can't. It's not. That doesn't happen. So it has to be something interdimensional or something demonic or something evil. Something like we've talked about was brought through the hole. We don't know what it was, but it can't be a flesh and blood thing as we perceive flesh and blood.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you. Very, very interesting. Well, let's take a break, folks. And when we get back from the break, I'm going to be talking about some more stories involving the angel effect or the third man effect. Stick with us, folks. You're listening to Expanded Perspectives.
Today's episode is brought to you by, or sponsored, however you want to say it, by Dollar Shave Club, folks. Look, it's a no-brain life hack that everyone that uses a razor to control hair should be involved in.
Absolutely.
100%. It is the greatest thing. Like, why would you buy a cheap disposable razor? Why would you do that? Why would you keep spending ridiculous amounts of money on razor blades whenever you can just, go online and sign up at Dollar Shave Club? Look, right now, I use my Dollar Shave Club executive razor set pretty much every day. I shave my head every day. I use the Dr. Carver shave butter. It is the single greatest thing I have ever been involved in. I loved no ingrown hair, no razor burn, no razor bumps, no nothing. And it glides like just slick like glass across the top of my big dome, folks. Now listen, that's not the only thing they got. If you want to try some other stuff, they got great shower gels. I actually like to use some as beard wash, but they have a amber lavender body cleanser. It's like a calming gel. I love it. They also have a mint cedarwood. Like if you get up in the morning, you want to get going, that stuff, it's awesome too. They got some great things, folks. I'm telling you, wonderful stuff. You've got to give it a try. And if you want to give it a try, if you want to see how great it is for yourself, you can use our code. We're going to hook you up. New members get their first month of the executive razor, the whole group right there, with a tube of the shave butter for $5 with free shipping. All right. And then, of course, after that, the razor blades go up to a little bit, not much, a couple bucks. But Your first box is, like I said, you're going to get that heavy handle. It's a big weighted handle. You get a full cassette of 4 cartridges, and you get the shave butter. All right, and then after that, you just get the blades shipped to you. Boom, they just start showing up. Normal price, the whole thing. No hidden fees, no commitments. That's the way this thing goes. You don't like it? Cancel it whenever you want to. But the only way to get all this goodness is to go to dollarshaveclub.com/expanded. That's dollarshaveclub.com/expanded. Come on, you got to make the smart choice, folks. Dollar Shave Club.
The third man factor is the riveting story behind an extraordinary idea that people at the very edge of death experience a benevolent presence besides them who encourages them to make one final effort in order to survive. Over the years, the experience has occurred again and again. To 9/11 survivors, to mountaineers, divers, polar explorers, prisoners of war, sailors, shipwreck survivors, aviators, and even astronauts. All have escaped traumatic events only to tell a strikingly similar story, one of having sensed the close presence of a helper or guardian. The mysterious force has been explained as everything from hallucination to divine intervention. And on today's show, I'm going to be exploring some of these tales. In July 1953, a 28-year-old Austrian mountaineer named Hermann Buell attempted the solitary conquest of a monstrous mountain called Nanga Parbat. Now, Nanga Parbat is located in the northern area of Pakistan and is the western bastion of the Himalayan mountain range. It is the 9th highest mountain in the world and the 2nd highest in Pakistan after K2. Steeped in a history matched by few others in Asia, it has staged some of the greatest Himalayan ascents of all time. Its name means naked mountain, and although beautiful, it is known to be a killer mountain. Climbers have died there in numbers disproportionately higher than on any of the other 26,000-foot peaks, and to date, the mortality rate on its slopes is 3 times that of Mount Everest. 31 lives were claimed before Buell's attempt, among them the British climber Alfred Mummery, who disappeared there in 1895, and 10 climbers were killed on a German expedition led by a man named Willy Merkel in 1934. Buell and a second climber named Otto Kempter were camped at about 22,600 feet and had defied repeated recall orders from base camp because of the concern over worsening weather. Apparently, a bad storm was approaching, but Buell and Kempter didn't care. They both knew it was a tremendous risk, and Buell later said, "Nothing like it had ever been done at such an altitude in the Himalaya, and it was widely beyond reasonable practice, but what could we do?" The porters they had with them wouldn't go any higher, and they had to make an effort without them. At 1 o'clock in the morning, on July 3rd, 1953, Buell began to prepare for the ascent. His partner, Otto Kempter, was groggy and told Buell he would follow on later, knowing he needed every minute in order to complete the summit in one day. Buell set off on his own. He wanted to be quick because of the incoming weather, so he unloaded everything that he didn't need. He wanted to be as light as possible, even if that meant taking on a few risks. He was in some respects singularly ill-prepared. His provisions were inadequate, and he was without supplementary oxygen, and was thus fighting a desperate battle for the most essential commodity, air. He was also alone, because Kempter never did rejoin him. Just as planned, Buell ascended rapidly, despite the extreme difficulties involved in a climb that required 17 hours of nearly superhuman effort. Every step was a battle, an indescribable effort of willpower. Buell began to realize he was obeying the dictates of his own subconscious, which only had one idea: to get higher. He later said, "My body had long since given up. I moved forward in a kind of self-induced hypnosis." The hours passed, and his physical condition deteriorated. At some point, he could no longer stand upright, and he was a wreck of a human being. He ended up crawling slowly on all fours. That's when something changed. Buell noticed that the ground was no longer rising, and when he reached the summit, it was without a sense of victorious exhilaration, only relief. Utterly worn out, he collapsed, and in the process driving his ice axe into the snow. Buell then took photographs and built a small cairn near his axe. Only then did he look around. On every side, the stone faces of Nanga Parbat dropped precipitously from the small summit platform. He said later, "I felt as if I were floating high above everything, out of all relationship with the earth, severed from the world and all of humanity." By 7:10 p.m., Buell started his descent. The sun was disappearing fast, and very suddenly, it became intensely cold. What followed next was a decision that verged on suicidal. A bivouac, a temporary encampment within a few hundred yards of the summit. He risked death by exposure, but Buell had little choice. Barely 150 yards into his descent, night enveloped him. Some distance away, he could see the outline of a large rock, so he made his way towards it. Since it was too steep to sit on, he was forced to spend the night standing against the rock face. As Buell had neither an emergency bivouac gear or a sleeping bag, he put on all the extra clothing that he had with him. He pulled his hood down over his head, put on 2 pairs of gloves, and tried to get some rest. Even with all of the extra clothing and gloves, the cold was nearly unbearable. He was tortured by hunger and thirst. He was overcome by exhaustion. He could barely stand upright. His head kept blowing forward, and he began to doze off. And then, suddenly he awoke. At first, he wasn't quite sure where he was, and then he remembered. He was still high on Nanga Parbat. With his boots frozen stiff, his feet gradually lost all feeling. He felt as if time itself had begun to slow down, and he feared the night would become an eternity. Finally, the moon emerged at around 2 a.m., but since he was out of its bright light, he had to continue to wait until morning to make his journey downward. With the dawn finally approaching, which he called the light of salvation, his body was gradually warmed and he was able to go on with his descent. It was a painstaking process. The slightest miscalculation could prove fatal. Whenever he slipped, even slightly in the snow, it took so much effort out of him that it required minutes to compose himself before he could take the next small step. Danger was heightened because he accidentally left his ice axe at the top of the summit. With no way of going back up to retrieve it, he had to push on. It was at this time, during his journey, that Buell began to draw upon support from a wholly unexpected source. He said that during those hours of extreme tension, I had an extraordinary feeling that I was not alone. I had a partner with me, looking after me, taking care of me, pushing me. I knew it was my imagination, but the feeling persisted. Not only did he sense that he was being aided, but he also felt responsible for his unseen companion's safety, which in turn increased his own caution. When he was edging over fragmented rocks, he said, "Everything I touched came away. It seemed too great a risk for one small slide or fall that would be the finish of me. and I should certainly drag with me my companion and friend. Non-existent though he be, I had to exert extreme care every foot of the way down. By midday, Buell had removed his 2 pairs of gloves in order to grip a rock, but he went to put his gloves back on again, and that's when he noticed 1 pair was missing. He even asked his companion if he'd seen them, and he says that he heard the answer clearly. "You've lost them." He thought the voice was familiar, but he couldn't identify it, other than the voice of a friend. He said, "Many times I found myself in the act of turning around to address my companion, yet at no point did I feel that my ability to reason had been impaired in any way." Now Buell's descent was a sustained and arduous ordeal. His thirst was searing, his tongue was virtually welded to his gums, and he began to foam at the mouth. He moved slowly, taking 20 breaths for each step. Finally, he rested and began to doze off, but once again, dusk was approaching, and he knew he could not survive a second night exposed up on the mountain. This realization seemed to bring a new surge of energy, and using his final reserves, he continued. Buell said, "The whole of this time, my companion was with me. That staunch companion whom I never saw and whose presence was more definite at danger spots. The feeling calmed me. It lulled me into security. I knew that if I slipped or fell, this other man would hold me on the rope. But there was no rope. There was no other man." Finally, Buell sighted the camp that he had left 41 hours earlier. He could see dots that were definitely people. "And that's when I knew I was safe," he would later say. Buell staggered in, swayed before he collapsed into the arms of another member of the team, a man named Hans Ertl, who had rushed out to meet him. Buell's appearance was shocking. They said he looked like he had aged 20 years. His face, desiccated and deeply lined, bore the imprint of intolerable suffering. Buell said only one thing: "Yesterday was the finest day of my life." When he learned of Buell's encounter with an unseen companion, another Austrian climber named Herbert Ticke speculated about the source of the experience. It may have been a sixth sense, his subconscious, his guardian angel, or the help of some dead friends. Ticke wrote that Buell felt only that a kindly providence had permitted his conquest of the great mountain. Although he survived this triumphal climb, he was not through with mountaineering, and within 4 years, Herman Buell was dead. Having plunged off an overhanging mass of hardened snow at the edge of a mountain precipice, Kogolisa, in the Karakoram region of Pakistan. His body was never recovered. In another amazing event, on the same mountain, one of the world's most famous mountain climbers of all time had his own encounter with the third man. Perhaps you've heard of him, Reinhold Messner. If not, Reinhold Messner is widely considered history's greatest climber. He is the first man to have conquered Mount Everest solo and without supplementary oxygen. He is also the first to reach the summit of all 14 of the world's 26,000-foot peaks. But when Messner began his solo attempt on Nanga Parbat, crawling out of his tent beneath Merkel Kalur shortly after 2 a.m. on June 27, 1970, he was a little-known 25-year-old. His goal was to move as quickly as possible to reach the top before an anticipated deterioration in weather conditions. Now, this strategy, which had been the basis of Herman Buell's success, had been developed in consultation with other members of Buell's team, 2 of whom, his younger brother Gunther and Gerard Bauer, stayed at Camp 5 as Messner began his ascent of Nanga Parbat's Rupel Face. He headed straight up Merkel Kalur, a deep, ice-filled chute. He was without the burden of extra equipment, so at first moved rather quickly, reaching a ramp between the south shoulder and southeast ridge. He crossed the ramp, but found the going hard as the heat from the late morning sun beat down on him and combined with the thin air, sapped him of his strength. Stopping often to rest, he looked back to register the route he would need to follow for his descent. During one of these pauses, he noticed a figure approaching rapidly and realized it was Gunther. At sunrise, the younger Messner had been working with Bauer to install fixed ropes to aid Reinhold's return, when he impulsively bolted after Reinhold. This had not been the plan, and Reinhold later admitted to being irritated. His aggressive climb required that he move swiftly and lightly. Another climber would inevitably upset his calculations, but he waited for Gunther, and the brothers began the final ascent together. The day drew on as they moved up the last sharp peak, and soon they stood together at the summit. For Reinhold, it was anticlimactic. He was exhausted and felt there was not much to see. It bore little resemblance to the place he had often dreamed of, but Gunther took off a mitten and the brothers shook hands. The climb had taken much of the day, and they could remain at the summit only a short time before daylight seeped away. Gunther was extremely tired, and on the descent, he began to show symptoms of altitude sickness. He seemed to be paying a price for his earlier rapid pursuit of Reinhold. He announced that he could not return by the technically challenging route they had followed up. He was too tired. He wanted to descend by the Damir face, insisting that it would be easier. Now Reinhold, believing the single most important consideration was to lose altitude, consented. Now this decision, to leave the known route on the Rupel face with fixed ropes, camps, and fellow climbers below, set a sequence of events in motion, events that would claim the life of one of the brothers. With darkness came a bivouac at extreme altitude. The brothers found a hollow below some crags and readied for the night. It was extremely cold. Gunther and Reinhold huddled together under a space blanket and waited for the dawn. When light returned, they continued down the Damir face. It was a terrible risk. The ice-clad, 13,000-foot precipice was known to them only from maps and photographs. Compounding the difficulty was Gunther's condition, which, if anything, had worsened. Reinhold was in front, sometimes so far that they almost lost sight of each other, as he tried to spare Gunther the agony of false leads. Once a route had been established, Reinhold would wave and shout for Gunther to follow, which he did with excruciating slowness. In the book The Naked Mountain, Reinhold Messner described what happened next. He said, "Suddenly, there was a third climber next to me. He was descending with us, keeping a regular distance, a little to my right and a few steps away from me, just out of my field of vision. I could not see the figure and still maintain my concentration, but I was certain that there was someone there. I could sense his presence. I needed no proof." The figure was silent. No words were exchanged. None were necessary. The figure moved with Messner, climbing when he did and stopping when he did, always keeping a certain distance. Reinhold had no fear, no sense that what was happening was anything out of the ordinary. "It is not that I was sitting there and saying, 'Oh, this is something special,'" he said. "I had a feeling it was normal." Nevertheless, he tried to shake the conviction, rationalizing that it could not be another climber, that there were only the two of them, not three. But the sensation, he said, persisted, and it was a comfort. He said the mere presence somehow helped me regain my composure. Now evening returned. The smooth ice face was now pocketed with rocky outcrops. Even with the fading light, they could not risk a stop because of a threat that one of a series of seracs, or towering blocks of ice, formed where the glacier surface had fractured, might accidentally collapse and they would be crushed by an avalanche. They continued with their descent by starlight. At midnight, they made their second bivouac and waited through the deepest part of the night. When the moon cast its pale light, they resumed their descent. The rest and the loss of altitude seemed to have restored some of Gunther's strength. They were moving nicely down the slope, each choosing a path that offered for him the least resistance. Now Reinhold kept waiting for Gunther, shouting exhortations for him to hurry up because he feared an avalanche once the midday sun reached the slope. The brothers discussed a final route that would take them out of harm's way. They were exhausted from their grueling climb, but Reinhold concluded that he had succeeded in escaping from Nanga Parbat. He stopped, waiting for Gunther to catch up, Feeling he would be fine, they would meet at the head of the Demir Valley, but Gunther didn't appear. Reinhold waited for a while, drinking glacial runoff, then continued into the valley, wondering where his brother was, but as yet unworried. Messner sat by a stream. He thought he heard voices, one calling his name and others uttering whole sentences, but he could take in only fragments. He felt lightheaded and closed his eyes. He sat there for some time. He thought he recognized one of the voices as that of his mother. Then he began to hear his name again, Reinhold. Messner knew it was the strange presence calling. Now bewildered, he said, "I got to my feet, and there he was again, the lone climber." But no, it wasn't Gunther. He then confronted the possibility that his brother was in trouble. It was late in the day, but he had regained enough strength and decided he would start back. He first retraced his steps to the base of the Dimir Glacier, but he could see no sign of Gunther. So, Messner worked his way up toward the Dimir face. If his brother had failed to follow his route, and he had, he would have seen him by now. Then this was the only other way down. Now Messner came across debris from a fresh avalanche, huge blocks of ice, interspread among them powdered snow. He stood and stared at the jumble, suddenly overcome by a sense of horror, but not acceptance, that Gunther might be somewhere buried under that mass. Frantically, he began to search, and as he clambered amidst the debris, he realized my ghostly third man was there too. Messner spent the night wandering around, shouting, collapsing into brief fits of sleep, and then, awakened by the cold, resuming his desperate search. Hungry, weak, his toes frostbitten, he felt that his own situation was becoming critical. He was now far gone, exhausted, and alone. Yet, not alone. Somewhere in my subconscious, the third climber was still present. He tried to come to grips with what it all meant, wondering if the third man was actually himself, viewed from a different plane of existence. Messner eventually staggered down the valley. He was half-starved, badly frostbitten, and in great despair. He felt more dead than alive. He found some woodcutters, who took him to a village. He was carried on a stretcher by 4 young men until they reached a road where a soldier took over his care. Reinhold Messner survived, but was forced to come to terms with the death of his younger brother. He later wrote that whenever he climbed, he felt as if Gunther were with him. On Nanga Parbat in June 1970, there was another climber with him as well, and the third man helped him through the greatest ordeal of his life. So what is this third man? A man named Dr. Griffith Pugh, who's a physiologist on the 1953 British Everest expedition and an expert on physiology of cold and altitude, acknowledged that many climbers have encountered this third man, but dismissed it as a decay of brain functions. Pugh argued that all of these ghostly sightings were no more than hallucinations caused by extreme cold, exhaustion, and the lack of oxygen, even when breathing equipment was being used. Pugh said that exhausted men, pitting their strength against a mountain, may well see anything. A meeting with dead relatives or friends is typical. Certainly, climbers have seen just about anything while up on the mountains. Now, Edward Whymper, on his descent after conquering the Matterhorn in 1865, and hours after 3 of his companions had plummeted to their deaths, said that he saw crosses floating in the air. At one point, on Everest, Frank Smythe said that he saw pulsating teapots, and according to one account, dancing horses have been observed high up on a mountain in Argentina. It is into this category of bizarre images that Pugh lumped encounters with the third man. Now, a man named Charles S. Houston, who's a medical doctor, a mountaineer, and an expert on physiology of altitude, likewise noted that the frequency of these reports, he says, are the most common hallucinations to have, and a companion walking nearby, talking, and sharing the experience is very common. Now, Houston attributed the phenomenon to a serious non-manifestation of altitude sickness, a cerebral edema, which occurs when the body's struggling to get enough oxygen. The body tries to compensate by increasing blood circulation, which in some instances causes swelling of the brain. Houston said most persons with brain edema hear voices, and many of them see bizarre objects. Disorientation and time and space is common. By the time these extreme signs have appeared, the diagnosis is obvious and treatment is essential in order to save a person's life. But if this is just a hallucination, just an effect caused by the swelling of a person's brain, then why are all of these premonitions so helpful? Why do they seem to be a guiding light whenever someone is consumed by darkness? I think it's way more complicated, and I don't think it's just a hallucination. And I'm not the only one. Dr. Pugh asked, if the third man is caused by decay of brain functions, then why would it be able to offer such support, so different from conventional hallucinations, with their attendant sense of unreality? We have seen it in Antarctica, on and under the oceans. We see the same phenomenon also on mountains. Appearances of the third man are in no way characteristics of delirium. When failure or even death seems inevitable, an unseen being joins those at risk. What changes? What turns the virtual certainty of death into the miracle of survival? It begins with belief. He believes that a companion stands with them. For those who experience the third man, there's never any thought given to the possibility that it is a symptom of a breakdown. In fact, it's just the opposite. Many climbers ascribe to the third man powers that compensate for altitude-related mental impairment. Those who have experienced the other presence make a distinction between it and hallucinations, which often disorient or misguide. The presence, on the other hand, seems much more real, assisting by either guiding or allaying fears with companionship. So, what is the third man effect? Is it a spirit, a guardian angel that perhaps helps those in need? Or is it something manifested in our own brains to try and help us cope with the dire situation at hand? Is it some kind of self-preservation system in some far corner of one's brain that is only activated when knocking on death's door? I don't know, but it seems to give good advice. Many people who have come into contact with this third man claim that they wouldn't have been able to make it without this intervention. So, whether real or imagined, it still is a guardian angel. As John Geiger points out in his book, The Third Man Factor, the third man represents something extraordinary. His appearance has always signaled a moment of transcendence over an explorer's, an adventurer's, or survivor's immediate dire situation. The third man is an instrument of hope, a hope achieved by recognition that is fundamental to human nature, the belief, the understanding that we are not alone. You're listening to Expanded Perspectives.
Are you hiring? Do you know where to post your job to find the best candidates? It can be a challenge to find great talent, and the importance of finding great talent is key when it comes to running a successful business. We interviewed dozens of people before we hired Mary here at Expanded Perspectives. With ZipRecruiter, you can post your job to 100 plus job sites with just one click, and their powerful technology officially matches the right people to your job better than anyone else. And that's why ZipRecruiter is different. Unlike other job sites, ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on candidates finding you. It finds them. In fact,
Over 80% of jobs posted on ZipRecruiter get a qualified candidate in just 24 hours. No juggling emails or calls to your office. Simply screen, rate, and manage candidates all in one place with ZipRecruiter's easy-to-use dashboard. Find out today why ZipRecruiter has been used by businesses of all sizes to find the most qualified job candidates with immediate results. Right now, our listeners can post jobs on ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, folks, free. But you have to go to ZipRecruiter.com/expanded. That's ZipRecruiter.com/expanded.
And we're back with Expanded Perspectives. I really enjoy the stories of the third man effect or the guardian angel. Whatever it is, it seems perplexing why people under a lot of stress or whatever reason, sometimes it's during a surgery in a hospital, sometimes it's when they're at up on a mountaintop about to freeze to death or whatever, but you feel this presence that seems to help you get through it. Like to keep pushing on. Like don't sit down, Cam. Don't fall asleep. I know you feel like you're tired. I know you feel exhausted. I know you feel dehydrated, but you got to press on.
That'll be tomorrow.
You got to press on. And I don't know. I just find those stories very, very interesting. What are you talking about when talking about tomorrow? I'll let everybody know.
Well, we're all going to a big wine and beer tasting this weekend, so that's probably what we'll be tired and dehydrated from.
Yeah, we went to one. We went to one last year at the same time, and if you follow us on social media, you'll probably see some pictures of that, and I'm sure there'll be some new ones as you're hearing my voice now. You'll be able to see. But yeah, we're going to be out there. It's called the Craft and Cork, and the first year I didn't go because my wife was like, "You want to go to this Craft and Cork thing?" I was thinking like crafts, you know, like people like making candles and stuff. And I'm like, nah, I don't want to go to that.
That was me.
But then the second time they're like, no, it's just craft beer. And I'm like, oh, if I would have known that.
So we went last year.
And I had a great time.
We made a hand, folks. You'd be proud of us.
Yep, and we're going to go again. So I'm looking forward to it. I really do enjoy it. Of course, the beers and stuff they give you, just small amounts. But I like to taste the different ones, especially this time of year. They had the fall brews and stuff. I find that kind of stuff interesting.
It's a lot of fun. It's fun to meet because most of the guys, the fun thing is most of the breweries are from here in Texas. Yeah. Almost every one of them that come do this are from here in Texas. You get to talk to all the guys there. It's fun. And then of those of you that follow us on social media, you'll probably have seen them all now. If not, you can go back and check them out there'll be pictures on Facebook and Instagram and all that stuff. We got a couple of shirts made up for this whole deal.
That's
so
right.
You'll be able to see those too. So you'll be able to check those out and see what y'all think about that. But I need to ask y'all a favor, folks. Everyone listening. I need to ask a big favor. I know we ask them all the time for reviews, and I see all the people written reviews and how y'all got tanks of gas. Thumbs up. I love all that. Keep them coming. The more reviews you write for us, the better it is. It helps us up the ladder. It's the way that the analytics or whatever the algorithm, whatever they do, keeps going is in order for us to kind of get more notice and gain a bigger following is the reviews. For whatever reason, it's just that's a thing that they use. But so I just always take for granted that I'm sure y'all are going to do that. But this is what I need y'all to do. We've got a listener out there who's having a real tough time. And his name is Joe. And Joe's daughter, Zoe, a beautiful 4-year-old little girl, was just diagnosed last week with leukemia. And so if we can do anything, we've got to bond together right quick and just give out all the love and all the good energy and all the prayers, whatever you want to do. Let's send that their way. Let's try to do everything we can do. Just the best positive vibes you got to try to help. It's something, that's another superpower. If I had the superpower to rid the world of cancer, I would. That's a horrible thing, and it just breaks my heart for Joe and his family. So if we can all just join together, everybody, if whatever you're doing throughout the day, when you're listening and you're hearing my voice, just be like, you know what? A little wish, whatever it takes. Let's just pump that out there. Let's just get that to them, try to help them out. But Other than that, I don't really have anything else, bro. I don't really know. What do you got going on?
Well, I have a survey I'd like everybody to take who's listening to this. This helps assist our advertisers and helps, ultimately bring you guys better content. But you have to go to the survey, fill it out. It really helps us out. You have to go to podcastlistener.com/expanded. That's podcastlistener.com/expanded. And before we get out of here, there's something else I want to mention. From time to time, me and Cam, we recommend other podcasts for you guys to check out and to listen to. Well, I found another one. If you're a big fan of history like Cam and I are, then this podcast is definitely something you need to listen to. It's called Historical Figures, and it's a fantastic podcast. It's well produced, the audio is outstanding, and basically it profiles the lives of people who changed the course of history. You know their accomplishments and you know their names, but do you know why they took the action they did to change the world and how they made their dreams become reality? Or what they failed at? Now, Historical Figures goes far beyond historical facts. They actually get into historical stories. Now, every Wednesday, the host, Carter and Vanessa, take you on a one-of-a-kind journey through famous historical figures' lives, what they were really like, what interesting things about their childhoods, what their personalities were like, and, recounting the stories of their friendships, their financial struggles, and giving you, the listener, a sense of what made them decide to leave their mark on history. Now, with an entire team of researchers, every week you'll learn little-known facts, and that's my favorite part. Right now, if you go over there, you can check out episodes about like Leonardo da Vinci, Albert Einstein, Marco Polo, and I recently listened to a very interesting one about Lewis and Clark.
Myself, I love that episode.
Right? They do a really good job with the background music, the sound effects and things, kind of similar to the way we do stories from time to time. Now, you can find the show, of course, on iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn, or your favorite podcast directory. You just have to search Historical Figures. Now, again, that's Historical Figures, or you can visit parcast.com/history to start listening now. That's Parcast, PARCAST.com/history. Almost said expanded history /history to listen now. Don't forget, folks, about Expanded Perspectives Elite. If you like Expanded Perspectives and you want more, don't forget we do an additional show every Friday, but you have to go to the website to sign up. You have to go to expandedperspectives.com, click on the Elite tab, sign up. It's $5 a month, and you'll get an additional show every week, including access to our entire back catalog. Don't forget about our sponsors, Dollar Shave Club. You have to go to dollarshaveclub.com/expanded, and ZipRecruiter, ziprecruiter.com/expanded. If you have stories of your own you'd like to share with the show, you can email the show at expandedperspectives@yahoo.com, or you can call the show 817-945-3828, and you can follow me and Cam on all forms of social media. Cam, what do you got planned other than the craft and cork for your week?
I'm going to be doing a little woodworking, working on some projects that my wife has got set out. So this whole week will be normal routine at work, and then just some wild woodworking stuff, and then getting ready for a Halloween party I'm going to this weekend. So,
oh, yeah?
Yeah.
And you're going to be Captain Spaulding, is that
I'm
correct?
going as Captain Spaulding, yes.
Right on. We have a Halloween party, too, that we're going to. I'm not sure what I'm going to be yet, but I'm sure I'll post pictures of it.
Oh, yeah.
And then we've got an interesting interview coming up.
Yes.
Actually, we got a couple interviews coming up. We've been contacted by several people, and so we're going to be cranking those out soon. So everybody who's an Expanded Perspectives Elite member will be speaking to you again on Friday. For everybody else, be safe out there, and we'll talk to you again next Monday. I'm Kyle Filson. He's Cam Hale.
Peace, y'all.